We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello, Malma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. First, President Duterte has downgraded the quarantine classification in Cebu City to a less restrictive general community quarantine, or GCQ, from a more stringent, modified, enhanced community quarantine, or MECQ. In a public address aired on state-run PTV4 on Friday morning, this morning, the president also announced his decision to retain the GCQ status in Metro Manila, the epicenter of the country's coronavirus disease outbreak due to the unabated spike in infections in the metropolis. Let's listen in.
For the rest of the Philippines, minus mga minus to, for the rest of the Philippines, minus NCR, kasi maraming hawaan, maglabas-labasan kayo, hindi wala ng katapusan itong hawaan. But anyway, it's the vaccine. NCR, Bulacan, Batangas, Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, Cebu, Lapu-Lapu City, Mandaue, and Zamboanga City. Naka sa general community quarantine kayo.
As of July 30, Metro Manila has recorded 48,389 COVID cases with 34,489 recoveries and 1,013 deaths, according to the Department of Health's COVID-19 tracker. President Duterte's latest decision came despite Malacanang's repeated warnings that Metro Manila could be once again placed under MECQ, which is second to the most stringent community quarantine if the situation worsens. The provinces of Bulacan, Batangas, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal, as well as the cities of Lapu-Lapu, Mandaue, and Zamboanga, will also be under GCQ beginning August 1. In a press statement, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said GCQ would also be implemented in Talisay City, Minglanilla, and Consolacion in Cebu Province. The president said the rest of the country would be placed under modified GCQ until August 15. President Duterte also promised free vaccines if they became available by late this year, prioritizing first the poor and then the middle class, police, and military personnel. He said the Philippines will be given precedence by China in vaccine distribution. And indeed, the Chinese Foreign Ministry earlier assured that Beijing will prioritize the Philippines once it succeeds with the vaccine development for COVID-19. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin also said that China appreciates President Duterte's South China Sea remarks, which underscored the Philippines' position in pursuing diplomatic means to counter Beijing's vast claims in the region during his Fifth State of the Nation address. Let's listen in.
Any country has the right to develop its foreign relations based on its own national interests. President Duterte's proposition is in line with its people's interests, the aspiration of the people in this region, and the trend of the times for peaceful development. I want to say that China's position on South China Sea issue is consistent and clear-cut. Facts have proven that proper settlement of this issue is conducive to China and the Philippines, as well as regional peace and stability. We appreciate President Duterte's remarks. We stand ready to work with the Philippine side to properly handle and settle our maritime disputes through friendly negotiations so as to uphold the South China Sea and the whole region's peace and stability. Since the pandemic broke out, China and the Philippines have worked together and lent mutual assistance to each other. the anti-epidemic cooperation has become a new highlight in our bilateral relations. The Philippines is a friendly neighbor to China. We will give prioritized consideration to Philippines and the friendly countries' needs in terms of the vaccine.
Aside from China, Manila is also in talks with several international firms working on a candidate COVID-19 vaccine, such as US-based Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna. In Da Nang, Vietnam, the province has ordered all eateries closed as the cases of COVID-19 there spike. Ralph Landolph Empire joins or reports.
Da Nang has announced that all eateries, including those that sell online and offer takeout, is closed now at the present time until further notice. The city made the decision on Wednesday night, a day after it had ordered 14 days of COVID-19 social distancing that requires people to stay at home and maintain a distance of at least 2 meters from each other if they have to come out. It also prohibits public gatherings of more than 2 people, bans festivals, religious ceremonies, and sporting events, and closes non-essential businesses like beauty salons, massage parlors, cinemas, and bars. Food and drink places were allowed to remain open, though they only sell online or take out. But many people ignored social distancing and gathered at these places, forcing authorities to close them down. Da Nang is now Vietnam's COVID-19 hotspot, having recorded the country's first case of local transmission in 100 days last Saturday. Since then, the city has identified 33 more cases, many associated with medical centers like Da Nang Hospital, Da Nang Hospital C, and the Da Nang Lung Hospital. Vietnam has had 459 COVID-19 cases, 90 of them active. Community transmission has occurred in several localities like Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Quang Ngai, Quang Nam, and Dak Lak, all cases linked to Da Nang.
Thank you, Ralph. And staying in Vietnam, more than 21,000 people in the Vietnamese capital Hanoi have been ordered to take a coronavirus test, according to authorities, as they scramble to contain the nation's first outbreak after 3 virus-free months. Take a look.
Mình muốn là thứ nhất là để đảm bảo sức khỏe cho bản thân, đảm bảo sức khỏe cho gia đình và cho cộng đồng. Mình muốn là kiểm tra để nói chung là góp công chung đẩy lùi dịch.
Mình cảm thấy tổ chức được một việc như thế là cũng cảm thấy rất tốt cho cộng đồng để tránh được sự lây lan ra xã hội. Nếu có những trường hợp bị thì phát hiện sớm hơn, không để lây lan truyền nhiều. Thì mình cảm thấy như vậy là sẽ.
In Sri Lanka, the reopening of airport further delayed as COVID-19 cases rise. Joining us live from Sri Lanka is Vanessa Viloria Silva. Hello, Vanessa.
Hi, Alma. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Vanessa. Go ahead.
Yes. The reopening of the Katunayake Bandaranaike International Airport, which was closed in the wake of the COVID-19 contagion, has been further postponed indefinitely. The airport was set for reopening on August 1 for flight operations in an early decision. However, the revised decision turned down the move amidst the prevailing situation, according to Additional Secretary to President on Foreign Affairs, Jayanath Colombage. The reawakening of the contagion within the island and in countries with which Sri Lanka keeps flights has pushed the government to make the decision. And another update, Alma, the number of persons tested positive for COVID-19 has reached up to 2,814. As of the present, 2,333 patients have been recovered from the infection, while 470 are still under treatment. On Thursday, July 30, 3 new infections have been identified, and among them were 2 returnees from the UAE and Qatar, and the other, a Turkish national, arrived from a foreign country. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Vanessa. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Alma, reporting live from Sri Lanka. This is Vanessa Viloria Silva, and we live in interesting times.
In the island of Maldives, face masks is now compulsory. Joining us live is Steffi Dewan. Hello, Steffi.
Hi, Alma.
Hello.
Yes, that's news for today. Authorities on Thursday mandated wearing face masks in public spaces of the capital city Male in response to a surge in COVID-19 cases in the country. The decision, announced by the President's office, was approved during a meeting of a national task force chaired by President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih, noting that averting another lockdown would benefit a spectrum of stakeholders. PO urged citizens to limit their movements, reduce the number of close contacts, practice social distancing, and work from home if possible. Later, speaking at a press conference held by the Health Emergency Operations Center on Thursday, spokesperson and Health Protection Agency Medical Officer Dr. Nazla Rafiq revealed that individuals in public spaces without masks would be fined by 1,000 MBR starting from August 1st. During a program broadcasted by Raja TV on Wednesday, Minister of Health Abdullah Amin expresses his opinion on the necessity of mandating face masks and added that discussion to implementing such a measure were underway, noting the proven effectiveness of face masks in controlling the spread of coronavirus. The minister voiced concern over the considerable number of citizens seen in public places without wearing masks. As one of the most densely populated cities in the world, Maldives' capital Male recorded a significant number of COVID-19 cases in the first weeks following the first confirmed local transmission on April 15. Following 3 months on strict lockdown, the state initiated efforts to steer the country towards a new normal with the paced easing of lockdown restrictions across the Greater Male region in July. COVID-19 cases surged again after the government eased restrictions, reducing the total amount of recovered patients from the peak 86 to 71%. The total number of positive cases in Maldives has reached 3,567 with 982 active cases. Till date, the country recorded 2,554 recoveries and 16 deaths. Back to you, Alma.
Right. Is there a penalty for not wearing a mask?
Yes, Alma. Everyone will be penalty by 1,000 MBR.
1,000 MDR? How much is
Yes.
that? Do you have an estimate on how much that is in pesos?
Yeah, that is around 4,000 pesos.
Wow. So you better wear your mask. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Maldives, this is Stephanie Juan, and we live in interesting times.
All right. And let's go back to Da Nang, where we have more updates coming in from Micah Gwyneth Apostol. Micah, what do you have for us?
Hello, Alma.
Hello. Go ahead, Micah.
Here's the latest news from Vietnam. 45 new cases of COVID-19 in Da Nang, Vietnam. The number of people who have tested positive for COVID-19 in Vietnam has topped the 500 mark after 45 new community transmissions were detected in Da Nang. The National Steering Committee for COVID-19 Prevention and Control announced the new cases on Friday morning, taking the total tally of infections to 509. There have now been 93 community infections since July 25, and Friday's figures are the largest amount recorded in a single day since the first case back in January. Out of the new transmissions, 33 are connected to Da Nang General Hospital, 4 from Da Nang Cancer Hospital, 2 from Da Nang Oncology Hospital, 4 cases from Thu Dung Hotel, which is used by Da Nang Hospital to isolate kidney patients, and 2 from Kamle Health Clinic, also in the central city. The latest people to test positive are a 29-year-old woman who works at Da Nang General Hospital, 9 people aged from
Okay, Micah. Are you still there, Micah? Okay, go ahead, Micah, go ahead.
23 patients aged from 27 to 82 years old at Da Nang General Hospital, 2 patients aged from 46 and 68 at Da Nang Oncology Hospital, 4 patients between 29 and 60 at Da Nang Cancer Hospital, 4 patients aged between 51 and 69 at a health clinic in Sontra District, and 2 patients aged 31 and 46 at Kamle Health Clinic. More than 53,760 people are currently quarantined at health centers or isolated at home. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much, Micah, for your updates there. You take care and you stay safe.
Thank you, Alma, reporting live from Da Nang, Vietnam. This is Micah Gunet O Apostle. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Micah. On a video message for the launch of Policy Brief on the impact of COVID-19 in Southeast Asia, Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez said the health, economic, and political impact of the pandemic has been significant across Southeast Asia. Let's listen in.
As in other parts of the world, the health, economic, and political impact of COVID-19 has been significant across Southeast Asia, hitting the most vulnerable the hardest. The pandemic has highlighted deep inequalities, shortfalls in governance, and the imperative for a sustainable development pathway. And it has revealed new challenges, including to peace and security. Containment measures have spared Southeast Asia the degree of suffering and upheaval seen elsewhere. Governments acted swiftly to battle the pandemic and avoid its worst effects, and regional cooperation has been robust across multiple sectors. Throughout the crisis, the United Nations has been supporting response and recovery efforts. We are providing medical supplies, supporting social protection programs, assisting returning migrants, and addressing the surge in violence against women and children. Looking ahead, 4 areas will be critical in the region's plans for recovery. First, tackling inequality in income, healthcare, and social protection, in short-term stimulus measures, as well as long-term policy changes. Second, bridging the digital divide to ensure that people and communities are not left behind in our ever more connected world. Third, greening the economy to create the jobs of the future and to decarbonize economies still too dependent on coal and other industries of the past. Fourth, upholding human rights, protecting civil space, and promoting transparency, which are all intrinsic to an effective response. Central to these efforts is the need to advance gender equality, address upsurge in gender-based violence, and target women in all aspects of economic recovery and stimulus plans. This will mitigate disproportionate impacts of the pandemic on women, and is also one of the surest avenues to sustainable, rapid, and inclusive recovery for all. The current situation is leading to recession and social tensions. Already, hate speech has increased and political processes have stalled, leaving several long-running conflicts to stagnate and fester. All governments in the sub-region have supported my appeal for a global ceasefire, and I count on all countries in Southeast Asia to translate that commitment into meaningful change on the ground. The region has much work to do, but has formidable capacities at its disposal. The United Nations is strongly committed to our partnership with the countries of Southeast Asia, and we will continue to support efforts to get the region on track to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and build a peaceful future for all.
Southeast Asia comprises of Brunei, Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization warned that spikes in coronavirus transmissions in a number of countries were being driven by young people letting down their guard. Let's listen in.
Although older people are at a higher risk of severe disease, younger people are at risk too. One of the challenges we face is convincing younger people of this risk. Evidence suggested that spikes of cases in some countries are being driven in part by younger people letting down their guard during the Northern Hemisphere summer. We have said it before, and we will say it again. Young people are not invincible. Young people can be infected. Young people can die. And young people can transmit the virus to others. That's why young people must take the same precautions to protect themselves and protect others as everyone else. They can be leaders. They should be leaders and drivers of change.
What we know about young people is that young people can be infected. Young people can transmit the virus to others. The majority of young people who are infected tend to have more mild disease, but that is not always consistent. We know that young people can develop severe disease. We know that young people can end up in ICU, and we know that young people can die.
Certainly, it's quite clear, and COVID-19 causes an inflammatory disease in the lungs, but it's also been clearly demonstrated that the inflammatory process extends into the cardiovascular system, into the blood, into the heart, potentially into other organs. So in many cases, this disease, while it may be mild or it may be moderate, it can affect many organs. And we just don't know what the long-term impacts of those infections will be. And if we just look maybe at, there's one recent scientific review of patients in Germany, in Frankfurt, looking at patients who weren't admitted to hospital, who were considered to be relatively mild. And those patients who never had to be admitted to hospital were followed up and had MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging of their hearts done over time. And they were found to have prolonged changes, inflammatory changes in their cardiac, the linings of their heart and the cardiac muscles. So now that may and will probably resolve itself in most of those patients. But when you start to see inflammatory changes that are prolonged, and we all know what, inflammation is essentially the body's reaction to the presence of a virus or something else. But inflammatory responses can also in themselves do damage, and they can do long-term damage. And any inflammatory process in the cardiovascular system can lead to longer-term heart disease and can actually accelerate other chronic heart conditions that may develop much later in life, but we could accelerate the development of what would be older age cardiovascular disease by having lots and lots of younger people exposed to a disease that caused generalized inflammation. And we just don't know. Why take the chance? Why take the risk? It's really important that we take those options that protect our health too. And yes, we want people to be altruistic and reach out to protect others, but it's also play safe. Use your brain, use your mind. Don't take a risk that you cannot quantify. And these risks right now cannot be adequately quantified. And when we say that the vast majority of people have a mild illness and recover, that is true. But what we cannot say at the moment is what are the potential long-term impacts of having had that infection. We hope that everybody who recovers from COVID-19 will make a full and permanent recovery. But there's enough people out there having difficulties with their exercise tolerance, having difficulties with their breathing, and potentially having long-term impacts on their cardiovascular system that we want to try and avoid all COVID infections if possible, not just those COVID infections that lead to death. We need to avoid all COVID-19 infections, both in terms of reducing transmission, but also in reducing the long-term health impacts of this disease.
ASEAN in Focus will be right back. Welcome back. 100 people gathered Thursday at the Democracy Monument in Bangkok to show their support for the monarchy in response to a wave of student protests across the country demanding a change of government, during which placards mocking the royal institution appeared. Now, mostly wearing yellow, the color of King Maha Vajiralongkorn in Thailand, the protesters held placards calling for respect for the revered king. One of the signs referred to how Thais address the king: "I will always be the dust under your feet." While student protesters are known for their three-finger salute, borrowed from the Hunger Games trilogy, royalist protesters hold up three different fingers representing the nation, religion, and the monarchy to symbolize that the king is above all criticism. Thailand's harsh lese-majeste law carries up to 15 years in prison sentence. Beijing recently conducted high-intensity naval exercises in the South China Sea, China's defense ministry said, as tensions grow over the Asian powers' maneuvers in the contested waters. China is expanding military presence in the region, or China's military expanding presence in the region has worried several of its neighbors, while the U.S. has vowed to stand up against Beijing's territorial claims to much of the South China Sea, including the contested Paracel Islands. Chinese H-6G and H-6J jet bombers carried out high-intensity training and completed day and night training exercises in taking off and landing, long-range assault, and attacks on sea targets, according to Defense Ministry spokesman Ro Goi-chang at a virtual press conference on Thursday. Now, Mr. Ren said the exercises were part of routine training and had achieved the expected results without giving their specific location. China, which is locked in disputes with neighbors including India, Japan, and Vietnam over islands in the South China Sea, has infuriated other nations by building artificial islands with military installations in parts of the sea. Washington declared earlier this month that Beijing's claims to most of the sea are illegal, ramping up support for Southeast Asian nations with claims to parts of it. The region is believed to have valuable oil and gas deposits. Australia has also rejected Beijing's territorial and maritime claims in the sea, saying there was no legal basis to several of China's claims. Malacanang stood by Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. in insisting Philippines' claim over Sabah. Citing Article 1 of the 1987 Constitution, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the Philippine territory includes all the other territories over which the Philippines says or has sovereignty or jurisdiction. Secretary Roque backed Locsin, saying the Philippines obtained Sabah from Brunei as a gift for helping put down a rebellion on Borneo Island. However, he also recognized the country's conflicting claims with Malaysia, which believes that Sabah was ceded to them.
We still have ongoing territorial disputes. There will be no resolution to these territorial disputes in the near future, but we will proceed with our bilateral relations with all other countries with whom we have ongoing disputes. Hindi po yan hadlang sa pagpapatuloy ng mabuting pagsasama natin doon sa mga bansa na meron tayong ongoing territorial disputes. Okay po? You know, this unresolved territorial dispute, as you correctly said, has been dormant. It has not affected our friendly bilateral relations, and I think we will definitely maintain these friendly bilateral relations despite and in spite of this unresolved dispute.
The Philippines claims Sabah was only leased and not ceded to the British North Borneo. Now, the Twitter spat was sparked by a July 27 tweet posted at the United States Embassy in Manila page, which tagged Sabah as part of Malaysia. Locsin berated the embassy and, quote, retweeted the content saying, "Sabah is not in Malaysia if you want to have anything to do with the Philippines." On Wednesday night, Hussein responded by calling Locsin's remarks as irresponsible while underscoring that Sabah is and will always be part of Malaysia, and that the Philippine ambassador to Kuala Lumpur, the Honorable Charles Jose, will be summoned on Monday over the issue. In a prior tweet, Secretary Locsin said Manila continues to assert its claims on Sabah as it does with its rights in the West Philippine Sea. Now, President Duterte, in previous speeches, assured that the government has not abandoned its claim on Sabah. The scale of economic devastation from the pandemic was laid bare on Thursday as Western economies and Southeast Asian economies recorded historic slumps, just as resurgent caseloads forced many countries into agonizing new trade-offs between health and financial stability. 6 months after the World Health Organization declared a global emergency, the novel coronavirus has infected more than 70 million people worldwide. And the WHO earlier warned that young people are not invincible and were helping to drive resurgence in many places that had largely curbed the disease. COVID-19 has killed more than 668,000 people and is forcing governments into a persistent balancing act between saving lives and preventing economic devastation. As governments try to weigh lockdown measures against the need to revive economies, the U.S., its economy, had contracted 32.9% in the second quarter, the worst on record since 1947. Indonesia has seen a huge surge in COVID-19 infections and deaths after reopening its economy gradually since early June. But the country can ill afford to continue imposing a second partial lockdown. The central bank, Indonesia, has forecast that domestic economic growth will contract by 4.8% year-on-year in the second quarter of 2020. Singapore Airlines reported the first quarter net loss of more than $800 million, the latest carrier to take a massive hit as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Uber will keep its Asian headquarters in Singapore for now, the ride-hailing giant said Thursday, blaming regulatory uncertainty for thwarting a mooted shift to Hong Kong. The decision came weeks after China imposed a controversial national security law on Hong Kong, although Uber did not mention the legislation in its announcement. The company announced massive layoffs in May due to the coronavirus and said it was ready to move its regional base to the semi-autonomous Chinese city if there was progress on regulation there. Uber has been operating in Hong Kong for several years despite not being legal there and facing strong resistance from the local taxi industry. Announcing its decision, Uber said in a statement it had seen strong public support for reform in Hong Kong, but not the level of certainty from the government that we need. Its Asian headquarters will remain in Singapore until the end of 2022. At the earliest, its office in the city-state has about 90 employees. In other news, China denied it was harboring a fugitive financier wanted over the massive 1MDB corruption scandal after Malaysian police said he was hiding in Macau. Lau Tek Zhou, commonly known as Joe Lau, is accused of being the mastermind behind a fraud that saw billions of dollars looted from Sovereign Wealth Fund 1MDB or One Malaysia Development Berhad. The money was used to buy everything from a super yacht to art in a scam that also involved former Malaysian Premier Najib Razak, who was convicted in his first 1MDB link trial this week. Malaysian Police Chief Abdul Hamid Bador said that Lau was in Macau. He has previously been rumored to be in various locations across the world, from the United Arab Emirates to China. However, a Chinese embassy spokesperson called the claim groundless and unacceptable, saying the country would never shelter foreign criminals. Lau, who held no official position at 1MDB but was believed to wield enormous influence over its operations, has been charged in both Malaysia and the U.S. over the controversy. He denies wrongdoing. And Najib's lawyers accused Lau of having tricked the ex-leader, although this claim was rejected by a judge when he found him guilty this week. The former premier was sentenced Tuesday to 12 years in jail and fined almost $50 million on corruption charges relating to the scandal, which led to his government's downfall in 2018. Najib is currently facing 2 other trials over the controversy. Locals living in the remote Raja Island in eastern Indonesia rescued a stranded short-finned pilot whale. By pushing it back to the sea, 10 other whales of similar type, however, were found dead. Let's take a look. ASEAN in Focus will be right back. Neither natural calamities, nor protests, nor even a pandemic could hinder the members of the Church of Christ from helping others in need in their respective communities. Here's a look back on their recent accomplishments in the Pacific region. Here's our EBC bureaus there.
To all the brethren and guests that are here, aloha! Aloha!
And as you can see behind us, all of these boxes are filled with food. In front of us is bags of rice, and even behind the stage is double the amount of boxes that we have in front of the stage.
On behalf of Aloha Harvest, our board of directors, and all of the participants here tonight, thank you so much for everything.
For today's COVID hero, I want to acknowledge the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church. Earlier this month, the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church stepped up and worked in tandem with public health to identify close contacts, get them tested, and contain the spread. The Iglesia Ni Cristo continues to adhere to our social distancing guidelines by migrating services online and distributing educational materials to their members to keep them home. For now, until we can return to places of worship.
And here's Lynn Tumbaga-Diaz on a story on a recent aid to humanity by the Iglesia Ni Cristo launch in Barcelona, Spain. Lynn?
Spiritual growth to its members. The first quarter of 2020 has undoubtedly been a very challenging time for all of us. I am pleased to note that in the most trying times, your members were able to bond together and provide spiritual and material support when needed most. For the Iglesia Ni Cristo in the Philippine Embassy's ambassador in Spain, His Excellency Philip J. Luier, congratulates all the members of the Church of Christ on its 106th anniversary. In the letter signed by Ambassador Luier, it said, "On behalf of the Philippine Embassy in Spain, I offer my sincerest congratulations to the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, on the occasion of the Church's 106th founding anniversary. Through its numerous churches around the world, the Iglesia Ni Cristo has provided comfort, guidance, and spiritual growth to its members. The first quarter of 2020 has undoubtedly been a very challenging time for all of us. I am pleased to note that in the most trying times, your members were able to bond together and provide spiritual and material support when needed most. For the Iglesia ni Cristo in Eastern Europe, may you grow as one in faith, and I wish you success in all your endeavors. The Consul General of the Philippine Embassy in Madrid, Spain, Mr. Adrian Cruz, also sent his greetings.
On behalf of His Excellency Ambassador Duelier, nais kong batiin ang Iglesia ni Cristo sa okasyon ng kanilang 106th founding anniversary. Sana po ay ipagpatuloy ninyo ang pakikipagtulungan sa isa't isa at sa kapwa nating Pilipino, lalo na sa panahon ng krisis na dulot ng coronavirus ng pandemya. Kami po sa Embahada ng Pilipinas ay handang makipagtulungan sa Church of Christ sa Eastern Europe at pati ang iba pang mga organisasyon sa Espanya at sa Andorra para maiangat ang kalagayan ng mga Pilipino sa lugar natin at sa iba pang panig ng mundo.
Spain has been badly hit by COVID-19 disease. In order to help this country in solving problems caused by COVID-19 pandemic, the members of the Church of Christ here in Barcelona, Spain, organized an event called Aid to Humanity, or Lingap sa Mamamayan, to help our fellow countrymen in need. Large percentage of the economy of Spain is based on tourism. Many of Filipinos in Spain have temporarily stopped or others have lost their jobs, especially those who are working in cafeterias, restaurants, and hotels. That is why our fellow Filipinos are grateful to the members of the Church of Christ here in Barcelona, Spain, for their help through the event called Aid to Humanity, or Lingap sa Mamamayan. The Aid to Humanity project of the Church of Christ has not only helped our countrymen by giving them goodwill bags for their basic needs, but it has also given our fellow Filipinos hope and inspiration. The Aid to Humanity also shows love and compassion to our fellow countrymen in spite of times of crisis. Reporting from Barcelona, Spain, I would like to greet all the members of the Church of Christ a happy 106th anniversary. I am Lynn Bautista Tumbaga Diaz, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Lynn. And before we go, please watch this. More greetings from Hawaii. Take a look.
On behalf of Consul General Joselito Jimeno, the officers and staff of the Philippine Consulate General in Honolulu, we warmly congratulate the Iglesia ni Cristo as it celebrates its 106th anniversary. For over a century, the Iglesia ni Cristo has greatly contributed to strengthening and deepening the faith of its members and to building the Filipino nation. We wish the Iglesia ni Cristo more success in the years to come. Mabuhay po kayo.
Aloha and mabuhay. My name is Hawaii State Senator Bennett Misalucha. On behalf of the people of the state of Hawaii, I'd like to congratulate the Iglesia ni Cristo on the occasion of its 106th anniversary. I have been privileged and honored to personally know some of your members. They are pillars in our community. They are a vital part of our ohana, especially in the special part of the world, which is where the Iglesia ni Cristo started its overseas mission on July 27, 1968. Mabuhay kayong lahat.
Thank you for joining us here in ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.